Welcome back. This is Here and Hereafter, and you may recognize this guest because she also appeared on Shelter Tales a couple of times. And Kim Tallcouch has a very interesting background in that she's not only working with shamanic practices, she's a Reiki master, she has her degree in psychology, but she also can communicate with animals. And we know this happens. We've seen it. I've seen it with an African, South African gentleman who had a very troublesome black leopard that bit him and brought somebody in, and he was an animal communicator, and they actually said he wants to know what happened to the cubs that were in the next cage to him at the zoo in Germany. That's where they got him, and there were cubs in the next cage. So they're sentient. So anything sentient, she can connect with. So, but I think there's a couple of things I had looked up. You seem to be working more, you're Reiki master, with the shamanic practices, and you're the second person I've had here in 2 months that is very into a Native American or cultural other practices, because they were here long before Christianity. And they worked for those people. You've been studying that. So where do you study it? Is there an institute, or are you?
There is. Well, they're not institutes per se, but there are experienced practitioners who offer classes, people who have been in the shamanic community for a very long time. And that varies on the discipline within the shamanic practice. So there's the Native American of the indigenous people of the United States. There's also it's shamanism out in the European and in Asia. Actually, shamanism started in the Siberian area.
And where did it start?
In Siberia. And that's still an active shamanic group.
How did they figure that out? I mean, Siberia's got an Asiatic population, like Mongolians and all
exactly.
that.
And it's in that area. But they are still that group of people. I believe they're called the Tagus. Don't quote me on that. But they are still actively practicing shamanism as their main spiritual practice. So there's my core of study is in the medicine work, the shamanic work of the people of the Andes, particularly the people, the Caro Indians, who are direct descendants of the Incan people. That's just where I was drawn. So I studied with an experienced shaman practitioner for 5 years, and she was, I was her mentor, and she instructed me. But I've also studied Native American shamanism. I've studied with the shaman from Nepal and Celtic shamanism. So the people of the
so it's really a cross-cultural thing.
Absolutely.
And I guess that was really the first religion or rock. Yes. I had taken a course in college. They said rock painting was the first religion because they thanked the people for the bison. They thanked, and I guess from there it developed. So it's very much older than Christianity or Judaism or, any of the other traditional, I want to say.
It's the foundations of all of our faith-based spiritual practices. Yeah. And it's earth-based. So unlike our our organized religions that have either a particular deity or an individual that is the focal point of that religion, the earth is the focal point.
It's Mother Earth. It is. It gives us everything.
And the mountains, the rivers, the ocean, each of these landscapes, and then of course the animals. Right, and that's really
that
where
ties you right in.
So my training for the animal communication started. Well, Reiki first opened everything up, but then when I started doing the shamanic work, is when I realized that I was able to work with animals on that level. So there's definitely
and they are closer. I mean, anybody or anything that's closer to the earth, to the ground, probably knows a lot more about things because they're paying attention. They're paying attention. One of my friends had a vertigo attack, and I have had them because I have Meniere's disease, and I'm hearing about a lot of people getting vertigo. It's positioning vertigo. They move their head around. I said, maybe the earth is doing something on its axis, and none of us know we should pay attention because something bad's going on here. But, we laugh about it. I said, we're not attuned. We're not attuned to our lives, really,
And that's part of the problem. We've gotten so detached from the natural world that, and animals, even domestic animals, you could put that little cute frilly skirt on that poodle, but at the end of the day, it's a dog. And they always remember that they're dogs. Right. And because they have that innate ability to be so aware of their environment, they're very connected intuitively, and they always have been, and they're always sending us stuff. And we just don't get it sometimes.
Yeah, and you see that they recognize, like when the tsunami came, the animals ran for high ground. Mm-hmm. How did they know? And even in my house, when I was having a problem with, I can't say things in my house that I didn't want, but certainly spiritual things. We had a lot of death, and there were things coming in my house that I didn't particularly want, only because I didn't want them. You don't belong here anymore. You belong somewhere else. And my animals knew. They would, and then you go out in the hallway and you see a dark figure that shouldn't be there, but they would. And then one of them was such a sissy. He looked and then ran over and sat behind my husband and looked.
Dog or cat?
Cat. It was a cat. I'm like, you big sissy. But then I went out in the hallway. I wanted to run over and sit behind my husband too. It's like,
Yeah.
So they do have that sense, and I guess they and we only use what they say 10% of our brain.
Yeah.
I wondered if they're using more of theirs than we do.
Well, that part of the brain, that intuitive part of the brain.
That limbic system.
Yep. And we have that ability. We always did. It's just gotten lost. Yeah. And it's gotten lost because when we have a complex language and we express ourselves verbally, not through other means, so that's kind of dulled it somewhat. They've never lost that ability. Right. And even, it's funny when you mention how one kitty was more brave and the other kitty was even among animals, there's levels of openness. They're all more connected to the other side than we are, hands down. But even among cats, dogs, horses, there's some of those that are even more sensitive or more aware, and not only just in awareness that it's present, but an awareness of how to deal with it. Cats are spiritual warriors. Dogs protect the home, the space. They bark. They're all about our physical space, although they're also very in tune spiritually as well. But cats, they do so much work that they don't get credit for in fielding energy, denser energy from us, and in protecting us from intrusive energies that may just even come and go through our homes or stay. And be part of the homes.
My mother, I was telling you, I have my mother with me when she does have dementia. And the first year she was with me, she got very sick. And one of my friends gave me a weighted blanket. Well, the poor thing couldn't get up after I put the weighted blanket.
Right,
a thunder shirt from Mom. But I went into her room, and 3 out of 4 of my cats were in a circle. And she had just come up, so they weren't real familiar with her. Were in a circle touching her.
Wow.
Laying around her. And I'm like, they've never done that before. They never did that with me. I mean, I've been sick, but it was shocking because they didn't know her, and they were all touching a part of her body. Yeah. And I took a picture. I think,
that's amazing.
Throw that. I think I will throw that up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and is working with animals. So when, because this is Here and Hereafter, when did you realize that you could actually empathetically communicate with animals? Was it one in trouble? Was it just like, I'm sick, help me? Or
actually, I didn't really think that I had any abilities, and I was going to a medium for a reading for myself, and she kept telling me over years of seeing several mediums, they would all say, you connect with animals, you can heal animals, you can work with animals, they can communicate, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And I kind of just put it off. I love animals. I had dozens of cats and all sorts of animals, but I just didn't know what they were talking about. And And then when I had become involved in studying more the shamanic studies, I realized that in putting myself in a state that a lot of shamans do, which is called the journey state, which is an altered state of consciousness, that I would see animals. And then when I started to be a Reiki practitioner, when I was doing Reiki on a person, I would see all sorts of animals. And I came to realize that they were messengers for that individual. And I would start to tell somebody, okay, well, I'm seeing an eagle around you. I first ask, is there any meaning for you with an eagle? Mm-hmm. Just does it fit? And then if it doesn't, then it's a messenger. Mm-hmm. And, there's lots of books out there on how to interpret animal as messages and as messengers. Mm-hmm. And I would realize that there were overlapping messages that resonated with the person. When you would say, oh, well, the eagle's message is this, this, and this, they'd be like, oh my God, that's what I'm going through. Yeah. So that kind of said, all right, so I'm connecting with animals at some level, not with an animal directly, but they're coming to me in that format. So I had a health scare. I had a cardiac situation that for me was a wake-up call, and I come to learn that they call that a shamanic crisis. When you're not following the path.
It affects your physical being.
And it was like, as I was laying there in the hospital room having got a stent, and I was like, I need to do, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So I went back to the medium, who was always telling me you can connect with animals, and she said, I can help you. I can connect you with the right person who can at least help you to develop your intuitive abilities. But there aren't a whole lot of teachers out there at that time for the animal communication.
Yeah, I imagine. Even probably now. Because so many people scoff and so many people, I don't like cats. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not that it's just cats, but you say they are psychic. Dogs are protectors.
Which is why people don't like cats, by the way, because they see through your soul. And if you don't want your soul seen, you don't want a cat around.
Yeah, right. Well, there's a saying, because somebody said I hate cats to me the other day, and I said, she who hates cats in this life was a rat in the last one.
I like that.
I can't talk to you any longer. But you weren't doing, so your body was telling you, your subconscious was telling you weren't doing it. It's funny how it comes through, because you read 3 cats here. I think we put the papers upside down, and then when you looked at them, you didn't know whose animals they were. You read Howard's dog, Jenny's cat, and my cat, and I want to tell you right on with my cat, I had to have him put down. He was very frail. He just was frail and sickly from the time he was a kid, and then I worked with him for 7 years, so you were right. Howard's dog is better behaved, but I think Jenny's cat still rats on her daughter. So,
Diego,
some of them are not going to change.
No,
some of them are not going to change.
You can't change people.
Well, it was so funny when you said, does it mean something to you? Do they have a relationship, your daughter and the cat, where they one-up each other? And she went, yeah. Yes, they do. She rats on him, and then he waits at the door to rat on her, when I come home. And Diego's he's a little pisser. Mm-hmm. But a friend and I were at a place the other day, assisted living. My husband works with Bickford Healthcare Nursing up at Windsor Locks, and they got this invite to go over to another place. Bickford is a nursing home. This was assisted living, so I imagine to connect. So if you have to go from assisted living to nursing care. But my husband couldn't do it, and I've been on the board at Bickford, so I went over with a friend, and they were having like this meeting, and they had a psychic, a reader there. It was just like a get-together, come in, have some hors d'oeuvres, have some entertainment. So I walked by her table. She said, sit down. I'm like, uh-oh. I had a reading for a long time. So I sit down. My friend was with me, and she pointed to my friend. I said, she knows everything about me. There's nothing shocking or nothing that I'm hiding that I got to worry about her. However, during the reading, she goes to me, somebody's coming through and saying, thank you for keeping the cat's name. She said, did you name your animals after a family member? I said, no, that would be totally inappropriate. No, I never have. She goes, well, this is something, think about it. This person saying thank you. Well, here, Barbara, who was standing behind me, her brother got very ill and was put in the VA in Washington State. She's in Connecticut. He had a cat that he was so attached to and he didn't want to put down. And I told her, this is what you do. You call a salvation place there. They'll get the cat, put it on a plane. You got to pay for a ticket, and they'll get it to you. And she came up. And he had named the cat after a Greek goddess, but they shortened it to Lammy. So that's what she said. I think it was Harry saying, thanks for not changing Lammy's name,
I think I read that cat. for you.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yes, because it was really emotional.
It was emotional.
Yeah,
yes,
because he had passed, and they were estranged.
Yeah, they were estranged. He passed, but she did manage to get him out here.
Yes.
From Washington into the VA here, and she did manage to get Lammy back in a carrier. The poor thing, traveling across country to go to the nursing home, and all he did was sit there and pet her, go, oh, Lammy. Then he passed, But it was so important for Lammy to get here, and then she got him to see Harry for the last time. So have you ever been walking by? I'll tell you, this is why I ask, and I will never go there again. I had to make a sales call to a place in Minneapolis, and it was across from a stockyard. Oh. And these people were sitting at the tables eating their lunch, the people that worked in that place. It was a mail order catalog, Sportsman's Guide. And I went and was waiting for my appointment with the buyer, so I sat outside and had a cup of coffee. Directly across from them was a stockyard. It was real rural. And those cows absolutely knew what they were going to. I had to get up and sit in my car and redo my mascara because they were screaming as they went up that ramp. And I'm thinking, how can you sit out here and eat every day?
How can you be so that?
But they're used to it, and it's Midwest, and it's cattle country, country,
and it's jobs.
It's jobs. But I mean, I'm looking at those kids; they were terrified, and I said, they know.
Well, that's a compliment. People often ask me, "Are you a vegetarian?" And I'm not.
I'm not either.
I'm a hardcore carnivore. Right. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I also understand the bigger concept of the agreement that we have entered into with animals going way back to indigenous times. When you would see indigenous, even to this day, most indigenous people, when they go on the hunt, their ceremony when they catch prey.
And they thank
the
them, prey.
And the whole community thanks them. And it's not taken for granted, and it's not wasted, and it's done in a respectful way and in a dignified way. And it's not...
but this is not,
it's how we handle that.
It's cruel. It's cruel. I don't know whether they were bolting them or not, but I bolted for the car. I didn't know what they were doing to kill them, but you knew every cow in that line knew that's what they were going into. So I'm out there wailing and trying to fix my face before I went in to see the buyer. But have you ever walked by an animal? Because I had a psychic once say, I walked by an animal and said, I'm hurting. It had arthritis, and it told the owner tooth problem, something the owner didn't realize. I'm hurting. And she jerked back and said, well, I heard that. Am I going crazy? I heard that. So have you ever,
I've had zoos, animals that are in a captivity or in a contained, and that can be either in a rehab situation or rescue situation or in the zoos. But typically, like what I say to people, it's not like I'm Dr. Dolittle. I don't go down the road and I can counter a dog or cat and I'm open.
Yeah, right.
And that's on my end, because I have to actually put myself in a higher level of a state of consciousness to meet them where they are, because animals vibrate at a much higher level than we do, just naturally. So I kind of have to bring myself up to their level in order to open and be open to that channel. So when I do work for clients that come to me with issues with their pets, I do that in my own space. I don't usually do it real time. I used to work expos and fairs, and that, of course, would be real time. But to get a really more quality kind of a session, I'm sitting in my own space,
quiet,
one-on-one, and I have to put myself in a place where I am more open. They're always there for the most part, and then it also depends on, excuse me, whether it's a domestic or a wild animal. Our domestic pets are just so much more in tune to us. They are dependent on us for food, for affection, for shelter. So they're very much about us. Wild animals, they could care less about us. They don't want to be near us.
And unless you touch them, they say,
they're a little bit more challenging. But the information that I do get when I have worked for wild animals is less personal, but more about humanity, like what people do, what the state of the planet is. They have a much bigger sense of what's going on, where our domestic pets are very they're contained in a bubble.
Right, they're in a bubble. They're in a bubble. They don't have to worry about food and hunting and all that. And, that comes to, so you do you do help people with animals that are having trouble. So that's another thing. People, if you have an animal that's having trouble, you can call Kim. I had somebody here. I mean, Shelter Tales was on for 8 years or so, and that was 10 years ago. It started 10 years ago. And he had a cat that was urinating all over his house. He said, we used to entertain. He said, it's always one wall in the dining room. And he bought this cat. It was a massive cat inn. He bought it in tiny, it was like a loaf of bread square. The psychic said, first of all, that's too small for you. It stresses him out to carry him. They got him out of the cage. And she said, was there a black cat in your neighborhood, or did you own a black cat before? And he said, yeah, I did, right before Tommy Two-Tone over here. And she said, he's still around the house. Your cat is spraying because he's upset. And she said, we have to explain to him he's passed. And, the next day I called him because I said, Carol, his name was Carol. I said, Carol, can you tell me what happened when you went home so we can follow up on this? He said, Connie, it was the first day he didn't spray, and he laid at the end of our bed when we went to sleep at night. So something simple as your cat before has, and I have a cat that I was so connected to, and I swear to you, I was standing in the mudroom and I felt something brush the back of my legs, and I turned around and I saw the tail end of a little tip, a white tip. Nothing there. You know? It was about a few weeks after he died, and I jumped 3 feet in the air because I felt it. I saw a flicker, and I didn't see him after
They stay around us. And I can work with both pets that are alive and in spirit. Yeah. It's the same energy pattern. Basically thoughts, any thought that we have, that an animal has, creates an energy pattern, which usually has an image, a feeling, or a sensation associated with it. And that's what I pick up. With pets that are in life, it's their perspective. It may not be right. It may not be wrong. It may not even be accurate, but it's how they view the world and their environment and their situation. And that information can be insightful to a pet parent to help with a challenge or a problem. And that's a big one with cats that are spraying.
Oh, they spray even fixed. I didn't realize fixed cats spray. I have a big old Tom, and I'm real connected to him. I got him since he was a baby, and he's never. And I knew something was wrong because this cat has never scratched furniture. I can't say that for my middle one. He's never scratched furniture. He's never urinated on anything. He's the perfect cat. Very affectionate. And one day I went up to the bedroom, and from the bottom of the bed almost to the pillow he was sick. I mean, he had pooped, and I'm like, this is not him. And where he was he was laying with his head on my husband's pillow. Never did that before. So it's like I said, Lou, he's telling us. He said, yeah, he's telling us he's not well. And some strip in the bed. I couldn't even be upset because I thought that's the only way he could tell me. It's the only way he could tell me, because I looked at him. He was a little off his feed, but, I thought, well, if you ate enough, So, and he got better. But, I'm thinking somebody like you would be great in a vet's office for the stressed out animal. I mean, every time I take my cat, you think he's being murdered. Any of them. They're being murdered on the way. They're being murdered while they're there. And they're being murdered till they get back home. So, that would be a great thing to have somebody calm.
I do that with my own
Reiki
pets.
on cats.
I do Reiki as we're in the cage going to the vets. I had an elderly cat. She was almost 21, and they would do the blood pressure. And, I mean, it's important, but have you ever had a cat have the blood pressure cuff on?
They got a kitty. They got a kitty blood
cuff, and they have to put the gel on the arm, and that freaks them out. It's called.
How about one of those things for pulse?
The cuff. Oh, they put the cuff on, and then it's an ultrasound. So when they start to, pump it up, the ultrasound machine is like boom, 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 freaks the cat. So she would panic. She would be fine until she heard that. So I'd be sending her Reiki, and then once they started doing it, I would stop. And the vet said to me, do that again. Her heart rate had changed. Her heart rate had calmed down. So I did the Reiki again, and she's like, her heart rate's calming down. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing the Reiki. A lot of vets, they may be open to it. They may not be so open to it. So,
but a lot of hospitals, I have a friend that studied Reiki, and all of a sudden she says, I'm volunteering at St. Francis. I said, doing what? And she said, I'm going in and giving cancer patients Reiki and any other.
Does St. Francis let her call it Reiki?
I think they did.
Interesting.
I believe, and it was St. Francis.
Yeah.
She's Catholic. It's a Catholic hospital. Yeah. So same. She was going in. I said, really? So that was a few years ago. I'm like, okay, they're starting to open up to the possibilities. It's a mind-matter connection.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hartford Hospital has a really intensive Reiki program, and they've been onto Reiki for a very long time.
Really?
Both in they first started introducing it with the women who were pregnant to help with the symptoms of pregnancy and nausea and morning sickness all the way through. And that was really effective. And then they brought it into their cardiac department. And the cardiologists were finding that both pre-surgery, during surgery, they'd have a Reiki practitioner, usually a nurse, actually doing Reiki during the surgery, and then of course for post-surgical. And they found that during the surgery, they felt that the Reiki was helping the muscles stay very pliable and to keep the blood flowing so that it would help with that process. And it's really coming much more mainstream. And it's funny because I have so many people who call me, and I'll ask them if they, do you do, because I'll often suggest that people do energy work on their pets for whatever the issues. And I'll say, they'll tell me, I'm a Reiki master, and do you do energy work or Reiki on your pet? No. On my pet?
It's going to take it should be here by now. We're in the we're in the 21st century. But I remember I was taking qigong down in Newington every Saturday morning with an Asian practitioner, and my brother had gotten sick. He got cancer, and his legs were full of tumors. You couldn't touch them. It was a renal cancer that just went through his body. It was too late. But I remember sitting, and the only thing you could touch was his feet because that didn't have the tumors in them. But I remember sitting there doing the qigong movements, and I was away from I was so afraid to touch anything. I was away from his legs. I was sitting at the end of the bed doing this. And that's an energy movement. Sure. And he looked down at me. He says, "Don't touch my legs." I said, "I'm not touching your legs. Don't. I'm about 3 inches on either."
He was feeling something.
He felt it. Don't touch my legs. And so, when you have enough people say this happens, you got to be a little more open. And I think we're getting there. I always say, I think the veil is thinning. And my husband said, "What are you expecting?" And I said, "I hope I can see somebody on the other side." I hope I can talk to somebody on the other side or see somebody. But what I mean by the veil is thinning, I think more people are accepting not just mainstream religion. I think mainstream religion is losing a lot of people. And I don't want to talk politically, but I just think they're losing a lot of people when they align themselves with politicians. That's a separation.
Absolutely.
It should be kept, church and state. But I think as a result, people are saying this did not work for me, mainstream religions, and they're turning to other practices. And I think
there's something still missing.
A positive.
There's something missing.
Yeah, there's something, and I think it's positive for them. I think it's positive. Look outside yourself.
Yeah.
Don't look. Don't be so attuned to the do's and don'ts. If you're a good person, then you know what to do.
Well, that's the problem. All of the rules and the fear-based.
Right.
Everything is fear-based.
Oh yeah.
And then it's hard to heal and it's hard to become open when you're afraid.
Or think that yourself you're a good person,
Exactly.
no matter what happens. Well, there was a Saturday night sketch, and I was raised Catholic, so no offense here. There's a Saturday night sketch where it was all Irish girls. It was for Irish St. Patty's Day, and they were on a dating site. And they had, the man was supposed to pick a girl, and the first Irish goes, "I'm an Irish girl. I love God. He hates me."
That sums it up. It sums it up.
And my mother's Irish, and I was laughing.
So we spend our whole lives getting God to like us, right. Who is supposed to be omnipotently loving everybody.
Right. So. How do you go out and love the world when God hates me? I was like, but it's funny.
One line.
It was hilarious. And my mother said, "I don't think that's funny." I said, "Oh, come on. It's funny." It's funny. But you want to talk about, I made some notes. You're also, what I was interested in, you got a BA in Cultural Anthropology. Was that before you started doing this?
Yes, yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So your path was set.
I had studied shamanism, within the, my college career, just because when you're dealing with indigenous cultures,
right.
You can't separate shamanism out of it.
Right.
And I was always fascinated with that, just in, belief systems. And and then all the way around, but it took until I retired before I started doing this
Well,
work.
first of all, it's a time thing. I think we get so consumed by our everyday life. I would have liked to have done more. I was going to go with Elaine. I can't remember her last name. She was on the show. She was having a spiritual workshop on talking to the other side. And it's like, I would love to do it, but I have to be able to concentrate. And right now, I'm just too scattered. I have to be able to give it my all. And I think it's like I'm in a group with painters, and a lot of painters pick up the paintbrush again in their 70s because they had to raise a family.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're very talented.
Life gets in the way
all the time. You just can't do what you want. A lot of this stuff takes a concentrated time and concentrated giving of yourself.
And it requires energy. And if you don't have the energy
you
level
at the end of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or if your job is just so
draining,
demanding and draining that you just don't have the resources to put into yourself at that point.
Yeah.
But don't.
There's always time.
There's always
as long
time.
as you're still breathing.
And
there's
I also
always
believe
time.
everything in its right time.
Right.
I wasn't meant to do this work until I found it.
Yeah.
That was my time for it because I step back and I'm like, God, if I had been doing this so much sooner, but that wasn't the time for me.
Yeah.
And then you just have to accept that. And but life does prepare us, and I can step back and look at
all the things you did.
Yeah, and it was all getting me to where I am now, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you're a wildlife, you said, not rehabilitator, but a wildlife
master wildlife conservationist.
So you're really about the natural world.
I am.
You really
I
are.
am.
That's so good. That's so good.
I volunteer at the Beardsley Zoo. I volunteer at the Chippewa Eagle Observation Area in Southbury, and I volunteer at a horse rescue. So I keep myself around animals.
Don't pet any tigers.
No, I don't get close as a volunteer.
Don't get close to the big cats, huh?
I wish.
I should wait and one of them say, "Come here, little girl." It's like, "Come here." It's like, well, why don't you tell everybody about your website? You'll be speaking into that camera over there. Just tell everybody about your website.
My website.
And how to get a hold of you for any of the things we talked about today. Any of the things.
My website is, of course, www.featherstouchreiki, all one word, .com, and all lowercase. And my telephone is 203-868-1528. And my website is kim@featherstouchreiki.com.
Thank you. So whether you have a problem with an animal, whether you just want to be Reiki'd, whether you want to talk more about shamanism, anything she does, she's willing to share with you. And we've had her on the show now 3 times, so she's a keeper.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I should have said in the beginning. Thank you for having me, Connie.
Well, always, Kim.
Better late than never.
And her husband, who's in the studio, did not make funny faces at her. I told him to make funny faces at her and make her laugh, but he didn't do. He's a good guy. So we appreciate you joining us today. I hope you found this interesting. I hope if you are on the verge of saying, should I or shouldn't I, and you have any of those pullings, listen to them. We need more people like Kim in the world. We do. Thank you.
Thank you.